The typical CFO career path is a pretty clear ladder, right? You climb from staff to director, maybe VP of finance or CAO.
And then you land in the big chair. But what if the path to CFO is less of a ladder and more like a jungle gym?
We're talking with someone who built a career on the idea that the right relationships and a willingness to do a little bit of everything can get you to the top.
Welcome to the pre-read.
Just like the slides you get before a big meeting, the pre-read prepares you, CFOs, and other executives for the next big thing. It's the global podcast where finance, sustainability, audit, and risk teams come together in the C-suite.
If you're making decisions at scale or need to understand the leaders who are, you're in the right place. This is the pre-read, brought to you by Workiva.
I'm Steve Soter, accounting enthusiast and Diet Coke aficionado.
And I'm Alyssa Zucker, sustainability nerd and equal opportunist caffeine addict.
Today, we're talking with someone who embodies a career path that's more about seizing opportunities than following a rigid plan. While at Amplify 2025 in DC, Jill Klindt, CFO of Workiva, stopped by the pre-read live studio to share insights from throughout her career and how she knew it was time to retire.
Jill's journey is a masterclass in career agility, showing us that the most impactful moves often come from trusting your gut, valuing relationships, and embracing the unexpected. She highlights the importance of people and relationships in building a successful career and why embracing change and being receptive to new challenges is critical.
She also highlights how being a jack of all trades in a startup can pave the way for a C-suite role and overcoming the fear of being the public face of a company.
So without further ado, let's get to our live chat with Jill. I'm so glad we have you on the pre-read couch. It's just such a delight. We've got an audience of CFOs and other executives, tuning in. And many of them likely want to have, a successful arc just as you have throughout your career. So you want to start? Just tell us about the journey. What has it been?
So I do not have the typical CFO career journey, I would say. There was a lot of just life happens and here I am, which is maybe not what everybody wants to hear. But I think that the lesson is that it could be anybody. Like you just never know what's going to happen. But I had a career. I grew up in Iowa, went to Iowa State and was in Ames, Iowa. I worked for a software company. Yes, there used to be another software company in Iowa.
I didn't realize there was more than one.
There used to be,
Okay.
Yes. And I worked for them out of college. And many of the founders of that company were also the founders of Workiva. And so through my career, a few different jobs, but I ended up working in Des Moines. There's a commute involved. It's not as big as a lot of big city commutes, but it was a lot for Iowa. And when I had my first child, and it made me lift up my head and say, I don't want to commute anymore. I can't be driving 40, 50 minutes away from my child every day. And it was, to a large extent, it was due to the fact that I became a mother. And I was in contact with some former coworkers and ended up working for the former CFO of that company that I worked for out of college. And he was one of the founders of Workiva. And so I ended up then working for him when Workiva started. So I was day one employee.
Could I ask who that was?
Jerry Behar.
Oh, it was Jerry. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Got it.
Jerry Behar. And Angie Quaker was my coworker that I had been just having lunch with while I was on parental leave, and ended up then working as Workiva started and as we were building the software. And luckily we were, so my degree and background was in accounting, although I'd done finance throughout more of my more recent roles before I joined, and had just, we helped to build some of the logic or the accounting usability into the early platform. And then as the company grew, I started to focus more on just helping to build out accounting and finance as an organization within the company. And so did that up and through. We hired our first we hired our CFO right before we went public in 2014. And so then was working for him. And I was the chief accounting officer then as we went public in late 2014 until I took over as CFO when he left the company in 2021. So I've been CFO for 4 years. It was all just a part of growing within the company and helping to build out an organization and being there to help support what was needed at the company at the time based on what I had to give and my background and abilities.
Well, we should point out for our listeners that we recently announced your decision to step down and retire. So, sad face emoji for us at Workiva, but that's part of why we're having this conversation. Um, Tell us a little bit. What was it like in those early days? And I actually didn't realize that you were starting more on the product side of things as opposed to accounting and finance proper. But startups probably like you're kind of doing a little bit of everything, I would imagine.
Yeah, and it wasn't. I'm not a code. I'm not coding, but certainly we were helping with some of the early questions around. Well, would you expect this button to be here or here? As just helping to provide some of the logic around that was more so because we had a phenomenal product team and the dev team was as they were building out the original product. But yeah, but as a result of early days at a small company, you do everything. You do whatever you need to do. You're making copies. You're doing answering questions, answering the phone, like you do whatever, right? So I think that's just any startup, you're just going to do whatever you need to do at the time and be willing to do that. I think to be willing to do that is another probably key to being successful.
Yeah, when you were saying before that you almost made it sound like by happenstance, I happen to have been working for this person and then he knew that person. But what I took away from that was I was doing really good work. And so like, sure, sometimes it's who you know, but it's also like who you know, how you worked for them and what they see that you can do somewhere else. Right. And wanting to kind of like keep that resource. And I think part of that is also that idea of wearing a lot of different hats is that like, okay, this is clearly someone who can do a lot of the different functions or jobs, just like a smart, hungry person. And so, we'll talk a little bit about like career advice and stuff, but that's what I took away from what you were saying is there was work that needed to be done and I was there and happy to do it. And like these things just kind of evolved. And like, that's the takeaway is be that person.
It's true. It's a much better way to put it. Steve was telling me before we started this to not be humble, but that I do tend to probably we all do, I think, understate our own worth. But yes, that's true.
Well, Jill, I'm here to be your hype girl. So you say it how you want, and I'll make sure that they're hearing it the way that they should.
Appreciate it.
Perfect. Tell us about the type of work that you were doing prior to coming to Workiva.
Okay.
Then maybe contrast that to the kind of, like how did that change when you got to Workiva? And then just even the thought process of going to a startup, because I think that would be a big kind of courageous move, I think, for a lot of people, accountants or otherwise.
Yes. So what I was doing before was really more of FP&A analysis. So I was doing analysis of a component. So I was working for a mortgage company. And
Really?
yeah, and doing just analysis on like servicing mortgage servicing organization and helping to do that. Just doing essentially all analysis of data, commission plans, and helping with decision making. So, taking a lot of data and getting it down to and analyzing it to the point where we could make a decision using that data. And that was what I was doing. It was very manual at that point, very manual process and work. And we did not have AI. You didn't necessarily, you were using Excel. I was using a lot of Excel and that sort of thing. But yeah, that was the work that I was doing immediately before. And then when I started working for the one of the founders of Workiva, then was doing more consulting work. He had a consulting firm, and so then was doing consulting work, but the same sort of thing, helping a company customers of his work with large quantities of data and trying to analyze that and get to a point where you were able to make decisions from that data.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that makes sense. And was that frightening or give you a little bit of pause to go to a startup?
I was married, and my husband had a very solid, steady job. And so for me, no, it wasn't, because I had just become a new mother and wanted to, it actually was a better choice because, I can work in Ames. I can work in my town. I'm going to be 10 minutes from my kid. Yeah, I
got it.
Yeah. Like most things, context matters, right? The time that matters. It does. When things align, that's great. If things aren't quite aligning, maybe it's not the right time for that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like things aligned for you and you kind of like trusted your gut, which was an easy one. But looking back now, what would you, if you would say anything different to your formal self, what would it be? Or what would you frankly tell those that were, that are now in an earlier part of their career? What kind of advice would you give them about navigating that? Or I don't know, open it up, navigating all the questions you get.
I think it's back to something that you said just a little bit ago that made me think of that it's about the people. And so the reason that I ended up in that role was because of the people that I had known and the relationships that I had built, of course, but because of who they were at their core. I would not have done that if I had thought that those people were jerks. Like, oh, I hated working with them. I don't want to ever go work with them ever again, right? Like there wouldn't have been enough, non-commute, or like there wouldn't have been anything in the world that would have made me make the change. Recognizing that you want to work with people that you can connect with and that are interested in a healthy conversation and that are smart and interested in doing the right thing and creating something exciting, like,
Yeah.
that's absolutely necessary. And so that is a key. It's the people around you,
Yeah.
even more so than the concepts or whatever you're doing. So I think that's probably the piece of it is just pay attention to that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
no matter how great the concept is or how great the idea is, it's not going to be worth it if you hate the people that you're working with.
It makes all the difference. I mean, it really
Yeah.
does.
Yes. Yeah. People matter. Passion matters. Their passion matters. Like that's the environment that you're going to be spending, for better or worse, like a large portion of your time of your life in. And so, like, think about what is that surrounding environment that is good enough for you, frankly, that like to make a decision to have that be part of your life.
Yes, it's very true.
Okay. So let's fast forward a little bit, back to when you decided to become a CFO. Looking back to that decision as a retrospective, any advice that you would give yourself then, or maybe like how would you maybe now that you know what you know, how might you consider that decision differently?
I don't know if I would. Okay, so when I took over, we were just coming out of COVID. And so it was an easier transition for me, I feel like, because I got to become CFO during a time when everybody was very virtual. And so for me, speaking in front of a crowd and that sort of thing has always been very difficult. It's not natural for me.
It certainly doesn't appear that way, just so you know.
Okay.
You hone that skill.
See, very nervous. And so I've had to come to that point where I can do it better over time, and I still have a lot to learn, but I think that it was an easier transition for me because I did that while I was virtual. And so I could have my notes and and it was usually during a Zoom call. It was very little in person. And so I think that really helped me early on in the journey. And so that helped make the decision easier. Now, that was something, I guess, that's what made it easier for me.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that really helped. And just taking on the challenge and saying, well, why wouldn't I? I feel like I was well poised to be able to take over the team and to help the company. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Believing in yourself.
Yes.
Why say no when you could say yes?
yes.
Jill, a quick follow up to that. I'm curious. For a lot of people who get that role, not that I know a ton, but I know enough that the biggest theme or the biggest kind of thing they had to get over was sort of the risk and the pressure. And it's kind of like not all on them, but I feel like the CFO is a unique seat within the C suite. But you already kind of knew about that as a chief accounting officer. We're at a company where we serve that audience. So I just think generally we understand a little bit better. I'm just curious, was sort of becoming that public face, was that really like the thing that you had to get over, and maybe all that other stuff about sort of the risk and the accountability, like you were already kind of there? I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm just curious because that's the sentiment that I'm getting.
No, I think you're right. I would agree with that. It was not I wasn't worried. I had no pause and was not worried at all about the responsibility or the risk of the financials being correct because I knew the team very well. Had worked with them, obviously had worked with them and led them for years and years and years, trusted them implicitly, still do today. It's an amazing team. The CFO team and everybody in that whole organization, I adore working with them all, and they're top notch, just the best. So no pause, like that was not even a concern because I knew everything was buttoned up tight and that we'd had really great controls and really great processes, and so no worries at all for that. It was more about the public face and having to do that was not as comfy for me. That was harder to overcome, actually.
Well, one last question as we wrap up. So much of this conversation has been about people and their role and their importance. What have you learned? What's your takeaway as you sort of get ready for whatever's next?
I think that what I've learned about people is how important they are, like, and how important they are for me, because I don't know if I really had thought about it prior to this role, and even, thinking through a transition, how important it is to just, if you are not happy with the people that you're surrounding yourself with, then you're just making your life harder for no reason whatsoever. And so making sure that you understand, what I've learned is just how important that is for me. So I think I probably always knew it, but just coming to the very realization that it is so important, and where you're spending your time is a huge asset, and where you're spending your time and who are the people that you're spending it with. And so I think that's something that I've learned is very important. And
Preach, sister.
yeah.
I'm with you. Well, Jill, thank you so much for joining us. Such insightful conversation. We're very sad to see you go. It is a big time sad face emoji. But delighted that we got at least one last chat with you here on the pre-read couches.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much, Jill.
Thank you.
If you're listening to the show, you know that artificial intelligence is no longer just hype. It's already transforming workflows across finance, sustainability, audit, and risk. But here's the truth. AI isn't replacing people. The real opportunity is augmenting teams with smarter tools while unlocking the uniquely human strengths that drive strategy and trust. Join Workiva and guest speaker Seth Madison, CEO of FutureSight Labs, on Thursday, October 23rd at 2 p.m. for a webinar on how to thrive in the AI era. We'll cut through the myths and share practical ways to blend AI with human creativity, empathy, and decision-making for lasting impact. Register now at workiva.com/PR-AI human. That's WORKIVA.com/PR-AI human.
Thank you again to our guest, Jill Klindt. And thank you for listening.
This has been the pre-read brought to you by Workiva, the world's only unified platform for financial reporting, sustainability, audit, and risk.
We've got more insights and hot takes coming your way. So be sure to follow or subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your edge.
If you like the show, leave a review, send it to someone you love, or just shout it out on your next team call.
We'll be back next week with another live conversation from Amplify. Until then, go lead it like you mean it.
I'm Steve Soter, and that's Alyssa Zucker. Our lead producer is Mike Gravano, with audio support from Joseph Machinsky and Drew Hayes.
Claire Allison is our graphic designer. Transcripts are created and edited by Courtney Kimsey. Thanks to our digital and social team, Mike Berg, Katie Carr, and Michael Karnowski.